You guys, there's over 51,000 new AI jobs coming to San Francisco in 2025. This is going to create a massive opportunity, I think, in 6 very specific neighborhoods in San Francisco real estate. In the last 12 months, my team and I have been fortunate enough to place 6 OpenAI employees into homes. So I thought it would be fun to share with you the story of what they're looking for, where they're looking, and maybe if you're one of them, then one of these stories might help you find your next home. Also, if you're an AI and your last tender is burning a hole in your pocket, I'm here to put it out. To see more about what's happening in San Francisco, I'm going to be back here every Monday at 5 p.m. Okay, let's start with a story. So recently, I sold a condo to a young couple that worked at OpenAI. We're going to call them Rob and Linda because I want to value their privacy. Though he still works in AI, he's actually not currently at OpenAI, which is where this money came from. So everything's going great with his career. But one of the things that I hear from all of my AI clients is that they're a little bit nervous. You know, this has all happened so fast. A lot of them are very, very young. So he was worried if things go down and it doesn't go as well as everybody's hoping, and I don't have a job anymore, these future payouts don't happen, he really wanted to be conservative about how he spent his money. So like a wise man that he is, you know, he talked with his financial planner and got some really good advice, very conservative advice. And so he didn't want to rush out and spend all of his money in cash. He decided to take a loan. And I think actually all of the clients that we placed are in loans. So at this juncture, they are taking loans on this money, which is great. I will say there's a little bit, on this transaction there wasn't, but on several of the transactions that we've done, the banks have been struggling to understand the way that the money works at OpenAI. With this particular transaction, it probably didn't come into play. It probably came into play in other transactions because they were trying to leverage some stock that hasn't yet been realized. And you can do that in a lot of tech companies, but because of the structure of OpenAI, it's as if the people who work there, even the high up people, not just, you know, your employees, like the people who you're supposed to talk to about this, don't understand how their stock and that sort of thing works. So Rob and Linda wanted to look for something in the $2 to $5 million range. I'm finding that's actually been pretty much the budget of most of the people that I've been working with, except for some of the people that I worked with really early on. They had smaller budgets, not surprisingly. They were renting in South Beach. They're really kind of on the border of Mission Bay and South Beach. They really loved being close to work. They do not plan to have kids. They valued light, which made it seem like they valued views. I mean, I do think they liked views, but mostly they wanted to be high up to get light, and that brought views in these 2 neighborhoods, which was a nice thing. And then they really like walkability and obviously a really close proximity to work. Linda works in biotech, so this area of town is also going to work really great for her commute to get on the freeway and get down south. So they wanted to focus on South Beach and Mission Bay, and so these are going to be neighborhoods that are mostly condos. Oh my gosh, they're all condos. There's no single family homes. But don't worry, if you're in the market for a single family home, please stick around because I'm going to get to some neighborhoods that are going to be an easy commute to like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get to Mission Bay, where whether you work at OpenAI or Uber or UCSF, you can get there really quickly. So honestly, in talking to Linda yesterday, she was saying there were things that she valued more about Mission Bay, like the commute for her to get to work. She also liked that there were newer buildings to choose from, but as we started looking, she realized that a lot of the newer buildings were really tight on space. I mean, basically, the buildings that you have to choose from in Mission Bay are Arden, Madrone. There's a new development coming up on 3rd Street. We'll get to that when we talk about Dog Patch. Those are the 2 major ones. And even the new stuff that's coming, that's going to be built over there, is mostly going to be rentals. And if you move over into South Beach, that's just not the case. They really wanted a 3-bedroom. Now, 3 bedrooms are hard to come by. Most of the buildings only built a few of them. They do exist, but they're just limited inventory. They're usually more expensive inventory because most of the buildings decided to concentrate them on the highest floors. But in addition to the 3-bedroom, they just wanted that space. And in the way they started building homes kind of post, I want to say 2010, is you barely get a dining room. You're lucky sometimes to get a small table in your living room. So the sizes really, really got constricted. Now, I do personally find that in Mission Bay, that width and the sizes of the rooms are bigger than the new construction in South Beach. So that's something to know. But for them, they still felt like they were too tight. And ultimately, they landed on a building that was built in 2004 that just had a lot more graciousness on space. They toured the Arden and they actually really loved the Arden, but Linda got worried. She's a total researcher. Oh my gosh, this woman, she's incredible. She was worried about buildings being built up around it. And since it's only resales at the Arden, there was like 1 or 2 things available and they just weren't quite what they were looking for. They also considered 2177 3rd. That's a new development actually in Dogpatch, I believe. The area is so close, it actually kind of feels like the same area. We're going to do a whole separate video on that building, so tune back for that. But they basically, when we toured that building, it was interesting how they were selling it. They had a couple of models and then they would walk you through some not constructed homes and say like, okay, well, here's the base price and you can add to this price in order to get a done product. They didn't like the feel of that, but also the buildings were kind of close to, like the towers, it had multiple towers and they were kind of close to each other and looking into each other. So they just didn't like the privacy. Another thing that Linda shared that was on her mind was the traffic from Chase. So that's a real thing, you guys. I mean, if you're a sports enthusiast and you live there, maybe it's worth it, but there's going to be a lot of traffic and not just on game days. There's a ton going on in the Chase, right? They have concerts, they have comedians. I was there with my kids the other day for Harlem Globetrotters. They just do so much in there and every time it's going to be trafficy. So it makes like getting home or getting in and out of there not great. Whereas I think you have the Oracle, but the only thing that really happens at the Oracle, I think these days, is just baseball games, which you do if you live there. You need to put them on your calendar because you're like, I'll stay a little late at work, or I'll come home a little early from work because I don't want to be in that mess. The other thing that she mentioned, Mission Bay, she said it just feels like the whole neighborhood is UCSF. She's like, proportionately, it takes up the entire neighborhood, and it felt really unbalanced for them in a way that you didn't get in South Beach, which just feels a lot more like other condos and other people and restaurants and stuff like that. So that was an interesting point that I hadn't really thought of before. But overall, Mission Bay is booming. Let's take a look at it on Google Maps so you can kind of get a sense. Okay, so I don't know if you can see the little Google lines here. Let me draw this for you. So basically, you're kind of all here is Mission Bay. And, if you guys take a look at all the parks here. I mean, one of the things that I think is super cool about the neighborhood, it's one of the only neighborhoods that there's Uber. Actually, it is the only neighborhood, I'm getting distracted, that is a planned community that also is residential. So we have planned communities in San Francisco, but they're not mixed use. So to be able to have a community where there was nothing that exists, I mean, there was stuff here, but no one came here. And so to be able to put in all of these green spaces, like there's so many green spaces in the neighborhood, and just kind of think about like, where should restaurants go? Where should buildings go? What kind of buildings should we build? I moved here in 2002. A lot happened with South Beach since then as well. I mean, I wasn't in real estate then, but a lot existed in South Beach. They just added some more towers. Whereas out here, you had some of the older like shipyards and stuff like that, but there was nothing going on out here. So to have all of these, to be able to think and be like, oh, where should we add parks and where should we add green space and how should we build these buildings so that we still have views of the water is something that hasn't happened in any other neighborhood before. Sorry, moving out of this. So basically you've got to like back up. It's here. And then, obviously you have the financial district down here. Whether or not you work at OpenAI and you want to just stay in the neighborhood, or you want to get downtown to a tech job, or you want to get down south to a tech job, it's just awesome to be able to get around. There's also the 3rd Street rail here. So you can hop on the Muni T 3rd line and you can be in the financial district in 15 minutes. If you're driving, which I do not recommend, don't drive downtown. Just don't do it. So another thing that a lot of people don't know, because I didn't know it either until a few minutes ago, is that there's a new central subway and it's going to have a stop right in the heart of Mission Bay. This is embarrassing, you guys. I have not. Have you been on the central subway? I have not. It does connect Union Square and Chinatown, but then now it's going to connect down here. Anyway, I've seen a video of it on someone's YouTube and I was like, wow, I should go do a video of that, or I should go ride it. It looked really, really cool. Comment down below if you've been on it and what did you think? So obviously in terms of commuting, downtown, I think most of our YouTube clients, they live in San Francisco and so they know these things, but we do get calls from people outside of the city. So if you live here, you know that, there's an office for Google downtown. You have Meta, you have a bunch of tech companies, Dropbox, all downtown. So getting there is going to be very, very easy. I'm also told that there's a lot of tech shuttle stops right along the area as well. So something that I thought was really interesting is, we all hear about like commercial being in the toilet, right? And so downtown has a 34.2% vacancy rate. But get this, Mission Bay's vacancy rate is 12.2%. It's actually the lowest in the city. So I feel like that difference stems from the newer, more efficient office spaces. I mean, like they're building these things and then you're renting it, so you don't have to like build it all out. The proximity to UCSF and all the biotech stuff is really cool. Anyway, I think the neighborhood has a great vibe. So last year there was 77 condos sold in Mission Bay, and the average price point for a 2-bed, 1-bath, it's going to be 1,200 square feet, and it closed just under $1,000 a square foot. So right around 1.2. The highest price was a condo in the area, and that was just under 3.3. Let me show you a little bit about the differences between the high and the low, or let's call it the average and the low. So this is the one that sold for 3,275, so almost 3. And I think a lot of times people think that it's always like this, but this is, you can get views for in the 2s, but these are, this is spectacular, right, you guys? So this is at the Arden. That's a BOSI build. I think they build a really good product. And I would say the Arden, like you see this, they actually have a big table. They do have, I mentioned this, they have a lot more space than some of those new builds, especially I find in South Beach. The new builds, they get really, really tight. So, look at this huge dining table. This is awesome. This is a 1,900 square foot condo. So nice open floor plan. Those views are just sick, right? Aren't those nice? You're set back more than your views, like if you were going to be in South Beach. So this is a 3-bedroom. You've got a bedroom here, so 2 bedrooms kind of stacked together. And then you have a massive primary suite over here and your own little balcony space. This building too, I think it's just beautifully developed. You have a pool. My clients actually thought this pool wasn't big enough. And they bought in a building that I think it has the best pool in San Francisco. They thought this was a little small, but most people really like the amenities in this building. Pool, hot tub, there's a gym, there's just a lot of outdoor space to entertain with your friends. All these buildings have these kind of mixed use rooms that you can rent and have parties in, which is pretty cool. You can just cancel them out. Big gyms. These buildings are very, very amenity rich. So the HOA dues in here are $1,624. The more that you spend on a condo, the more that you spend on HOA dues. They are generally done by the size. So this one is what you get for the average price. So I told you the average price in the neighborhood is $2.1 million. This is $995 a square foot, 1,200 square feet. This is the same building, but look, no views. Oh, they have to show you the outside views. You still get a dining table. That's good. But this looks so sad in comparison. But, the same buyer buying this does not typically have $3.3 million to buy the other one. So I just thought that would be useful. I hope you find it useful to show you the differences between kind of the highs and the lows in that neighborhood. So the north side of Mission Bay is going to be centered around the Chase Center. Let me see if I can pull this up. Hold on. So I dropped myself into Google Maps. So there's restaurants like all around here, which is pretty cool. These are open all the time. So you can actually just come here and like go to a concert, go to a game, but you can also come here and go to dumpling time. There's like a really nice steakhouse here. There's a really, really cool sports bar. I don't think San Francisco actually has a lot of sports bars. This place is more kind of like grab and go burger, like super quick. I don't know why you'd eat there because you can grab that inside. It went from being a neighborhood that aside from going to like Spark Social, let me show you Spark Social. We actually did we did a birthday party for him there. Oh, let me see. Can I get in here? There's all these food trucks in there. There's like lawn games. There's like soccer areas. There's all kinds of stuff. There's like two sides. On the other side, which Google doesn't want to let me in, there's a mini golf thing. So I was actually I just went in and said like, hey, can I open up a tab at all these different places? And then we reserved a table, of course, but it was very last minute, actually, unsurprisingly. And then I just told the kids, like, you just go and say Roshan's name, and then you can order whatever you want at these places. And we kind of met at the table, and then they were able to just like run around. It was super cool. But it used to be that was like the only thing that they had over there. And now there's just so much more. Tons of just different little parks and different things happening there. And it feels really fresh and new and clean. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is Mission Creek Park. You know, you've got this whole waterway, which we saw from the Arden, right? Where they have those houseboats and stuff there. It's like a complete outdoor lifestyle hub. It's got basketball courts. It's got dog parks. They have regular community activities from live outdoor music to movies. This is really where Mission Bay comes to life on the weekends. The other thing I wanted to show you is this Mission Rock. So Mission Rock, which is, and we're back in the Bay. Mission Rock, which is here. Let's see what we see on Google Maps when we see that. So you see a lot of construction. It's very, very industrial, but there's going to be 1,200 new rental units, right? 40% of those are going to be affordable housing. My understanding is that there's not any condos slated to go in again. So again, back to the point of my client, it's not all condos. So the interesting thing is, honestly, I think that could be an interesting appreciation play for the condo buildings that do exist there, because with all the jobs there definitely are going to be people who want to buy close to where they work. And so with the limited supply of condos versus rentals, we could see some price pressure on those buildings. So that'll be interesting to watch. I do think it's an area of town that, quite honestly, will appreciate. A couple other things that are going on that I found out when I was researching this. So there's this STEM education space that's opening at the end of this year. And from what I gathered, it was going to be this really cool learning space that I think is going to be associated. I'm not sure if it's going to be a school, a public school. It seemed like it was going to be. So if you know, let me know in the comments below. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. You have Icona Labs in the neighborhood. You have Uber in the neighborhood. So speaking of Uber, you know, when that building was built, it's got this whole like well-being of the employee in mind. So the walls for the building have like built-in ventilation where you feel good, and there's like tree space and park space and stuff like that. Like, I get a little frustrated with San Francisco when they build all these big towers. I lived in Singapore. Well, I was there for 3 months for a sabbatical, and there all the high-rise buildings had, you know, midway up, they would have parks and like kids places and stuff like that. I feel like San Francisco developers could do a better job of integrating that. And it seems like you just see a lot more green space in Mission Bay, certainly, than you do in South Beach. So a couple things that you need to know. We talked about pricing. HOA fees, typically you're looking at about $800 to $1,200 a month. We did a whole separate video about HOA fees and condos and things to look out for when buying a condo, or just reach out. But there's reasons to pay HOA fees, and they help maintain the building. And whether you own a house or a condo, there's maintenance that needs to happen. Water views, obviously, they can command a 20 to 30% premium. There's not not a lot of public schools in the area, and schools are another thing that we can talk about separately because they're complicated. So if you're thinking about buying there, I think you just need to think a little bit about renters versus owners, traffic, and then just comparing the buildings and comparing some of the buildings there and the areas in other places like South Beach. So let's jump in and talk about South Beach. So I mentioned that Linda and Jim were also considering South Beach, and ultimately they landed there. The downside, and if we ever work together or you work with someone on my team, you're going to notice that we talk a lot about downsides. We're not here to sell you something. We're here to get you the house that you want after you've carefully evaluated downsides. So one of the downsides, I think, to South Beach is that there's actually a lot of traffic to get to other parts of the city, mostly in the morning and the evening. It's like fine during the day. I mean, on the weekend, I actually had to go down for an acupuncture appointment. I was like, oh, there's parking everywhere. It's so easy. But for my client, Rob, he actually currently works at Anthropic. So his commute is actually closer from South Beach than it would be from Mission Bay. So for a lot of tech people, it's going to be closer in South Beach, though it's not a bad commute in Mission Bay. But if you are wanting to get out, like I had a showing actually with them in South Beach at 5 p.m. on, I don't know, it was like a Thursday or something like that. And I needed to get to the north side of town for a showing. And I kid you not, I think it took me 40 minutes to get out of downtown. So just, understanding that it does get really congested in certain hours, and like you probably want to plan your life accordingly. In fact, I told them all future showings will end by 4 p.m. because just like, who wants to sit in traffic? I hate that. I do think, though, for most people who live in the area, they just walk to work. The traffic is not an issue unless, of course, you need to go somewhere after work, in which case you just wait till 6 or 6:30 and then you're good. So South Beach, it's definitely more established. It's older than Mission Bay. Honestly, I'm not sure that it has more going for it on the restaurant scene than the area like kind of around Chase and Dog Patch. It's just different, right? You have the ferry building, and then you have a bunch of restaurants that are on the water. Oh my gosh, you guys, I ate at Angler the other day. I had not been there. I'm like, okay, please remember. I always forget, like I eat somewhere and then I forget to eat there again because there's so many restaurants. I called my assistant when I was writing this. I was like, write this down. I need to remember to eat there again. But it was so good. I feel like it was one of the best meals I've had in San Francisco in a long time. I think they have a Michelin star. I had this radicchio salad that I was obsessing over and talking to ChatGPT to try to recreate the menu. Like, I never know what to do with radicchio. Sorry, I digress. But Angler, if you haven't eaten there, it's really good. But there's so many restaurants right on the water, and having a dining experience where you're right on the water is really nice. And, so as opposed to Mission Bay, I think you have access to walking and working out along the water. But in South Beach, you have more access to kind of living on the water in terms of eating and recreation and that sort of thing. So I think that is a difference. As far as weather and transportation goes, I think they're basically the same, aside from the traffic that I just outlined for both getting out of the area, and then also I think the Chase traffic is far worse, far more frequent than the Oracle traffic. So just like Mission Bay, you're going to pay more for waterfront property. You're going to pay more for massive views, particularly of the bridge, particularly of downtown. The bridge tends to command an even higher price point than city views. Mostly you're looking around $1,400 to $1,800 a square foot, but there are several buildings that are well over $2,000 a square foot. The most expensive sale last year was $11 million. It was at Stewart Lane, and it sold for over $3,000 a square foot. So the range runs the gamut over there, but I think mostly you could spend between $2 and $4 million and get a really, really nice place with, going closer to the 3s and 4s to getting a view. You can also get a place for $1.2, $1.5 million, but probably not with views. So last year in South Beach, there were 200 sales, and the average price point for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath was close to 1.6 versus I think it was 1.2 over in Mission Bay. So you are paying about a 20 to 30% premium to be in South Beach versus Mission Bay. And I think there could be appreciation in Mission Bay. I think when people think of South Beach, I want to show you something really quick. I think they think mostly of just the high rises because that's mostly what's there. But there is an area called South Park, and look how cute this is. It's like all these older buildings that have, some new ones as well. They're all built right around this park. Inventory doesn't come up here very often, but these are all really cool. They don't actually look like it from out here. There's really cool inventory right around this park. Super, super cool. If you're looking for something older, but you still want to be in this area of town. I mean, there's a lot of conversion lofts and stuff like that in and around South Beach, but I love this little area. Okay, so we looked at South Park, which I think is really cool. The other thing about South Beach, I think it's a little lacking, you guys, on green space. Now, you do have the whole Embarcadero, so there's like massive views. You can run on the Embarcadero, but there's just not a ton of green space. But there is, I mentioned this once before, but there is a space. Let me show you. So Mission Creek Channel, right, which I talked to you about, South Beach technically is like from this side over. So this is actually in Mission Bay, but there is a ton of great stuff there. You've got walking trails, you've got biking trails, there's kayaking. So it's a great place for jogging, paddle boarding. You can do, there's a public boat launching place. There's an off-leash dog area. That's going to be super popular if you have pets. There's sports courts, there's playgrounds. Anyway, it's pretty cool. They've got those houseboats on there, which we saw from the Arden, right? So you do have some options. It's not, I feel like there is more green space in Mission Bay than there is in South Beach. So we talked a little bit about prices already, but prices, they've been hit super hard post-COVID. I personally believe that the bottom has come and went. We are seeing a bit of appreciation. More importantly, we are seeing a lot more transactions than I've seen in years. The property that my clients bought, it was purchased by the sellers that they bought from for the same price that they paid in 2015. And that is not an unusual story for condos in this neighborhood. So literally you can pay prices that you would have paid 10 years ago. And that is not true anywhere else in San Francisco. Now, I just want to be clear. I don't necessarily think that there's a mad rush and that suddenly prices are going to skyrocket through the roof. But I do think if you buy it and hold it for a while, I don't think you're going to lose money. I also think, maybe it was overvalued at some point and now it's kind of come down a little bit more to reality. But we are seeing a lot more people come into the city, even from like other parts of the Bay. There's really is a renewed optimism since Daniel Lurie took over as mayor. People are really betting on him and they're acting accordingly, and they're placing their money on those bets in the housing market. And I really, really do see that. So I don't know if you guys know who this is, but Robert Refkin, he's the CEO of Compass. He's kind of famous in my world, but he was interviewed by, I think it was like CSNBC or something. And he lives in New York. He's not here. But he was asked, based on what you understand, and he's very, very involved, what you understand about the entire country, like where do you see, opportunities? He said he feels the best financial opportunity in real estate right now. And the thing that is the most on sale is condos in San Francisco. And he's specifically talking about these areas of town. And that's something that I firmly believe as well. So if you're looking for more traditional inventory and less high-rise life, the next neighborhood on my list could be for you. And don't worry, we are going to get to single family homes. So hang in there with me. We're going to get to those too. But first, I want to pop over to Dogpatch. This is Dogpatch, and I'll zoom out and show you on the map. But first I wanted to kind of show you around. So you do have a different kind of inventory here. You can see that, there's no high rises. So you've got, early 1900s construction, Victorians, Edwardians. There's a lot of artisan types of shops in the neighborhood. Let me just zoom out and show you where we are on the map. So, right, here's Mission Bay here. So you're just south of it. So it is going to take a little bit longer if you work at a company like Google or something downtown, if you're working downtown. But if you want to be in Mission Bay, this allows you to be close to it, but not be in it if if that wasn't really your scene. So there's been some new developments there. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But overall, there's just more character and charm than like the shiny new modernness of Mission Bay and South Beach. Also, the neighborhood, it's going to have a very different kind of character to it. The streets are going to be a little bit more tight and it's a little bit more eclectic than Mission Bay. Since it's older and it's more established, the neighborhoods, it's honestly, it's always flown a little under the radar and been a little bit more affordable. It's been popular among artists and creators. Like all the other neighborhoods that we've discussed so far, it is flat, it's super walkable. It's walkable to everything in Mission Bay. So everything in Mission Bay is accessible, but they have some of their own things too. It's known more for independent restaurants, breweries, coffee shops. So some notable spots, there's Pacino, which was kind of very close to where we just were on the map. It's Just For You. There's a fair amount of like local boutique shopping. There's some art galleries. There's some maker spaces. There have been some new developments there. So if you're not into the Victorians and that sort of thing, and you want to be in a building, but you don't want to be in a high-rise building, there's been some lofts, like 950 Tennessee is a loft building project where they're more kind of almost like townhomes. I mentioned to you earlier that project, 2177 3rd Street. That was the new project. They're still selling new construction there. I think they only have a few things left, but they do have things left. That's actually Dogpatch as well. And then there's Esprit Park condominiums. Those were done, I think, in the early 2000s, but it's this beautiful brick building. And I think there's like 150 residents in there. I'm a sucker for a brick facade. And there's 2 and 3 bedroom layouts in there. I actually really like that building. It feels really nice. And they just did a massive renovation to Esprit Park that it surrounds. And so, that's a beautiful green space as well. So Pier 70, we've also done separate videos on this as well. The plan is for there to be over 1 million, yes, 1 million square feet of commercial space. There's going to be somewhere between 1,100 and 2,000 residential units. 30% of those are going to be below market rate housing. The good news is that this project, as opposed to many of the projects like around Mission Bay, it's currently slotted to have resale condos in there. There's no numbers on the exact proportions. They have not been released yet, but it would be great to get some more resale condos. So in terms of prices and stuff, in 2024, there was 40 condo sales in Dogpatch, and the average sales price of those condos was $1,050,000. The price per square foot was $1,048. And overall, the condos there are smaller. They're 1023, as opposed to some of the other areas where we're looking at like 1,200. There was only one single family home that was sold all of last year. There's really not a lot of single family homes. It was a 2-bedroom and it sold for 1.6. I actually thought it was really interesting, and I was surprised to see that the price per square foot was actually higher than Mission Bay, because the inventory is older. So typically that brand new inventory is actually selling for a much higher price per square foot. That was surprising to me. I'm not sure. I'd have to dig into it a little bit more, but I'm not sure if that's because it's so limited. It's such a small neighborhood, and maybe we have a lot of buyers that don't want to be in a box. They don't want to be in a big building. They want to be in something that's quintessentially San Francisco. I'll be honest, we haven't had a ton of Dogpatch buyers, but maybe some of the people that were initially attracted to Mission Bay and some of those areas, they really wanted more of that quintessential experience. In terms of where the neighborhood is going, let's check out some of these numbers. So there's going to be between 1 and 1.75 square feet of office and lab space that's going to be added. There's going to be up to 10,000 construction jobs and 12,000 permanent jobs created from these. So that feels like a boom for the neighborhood. 90,000 square feet is going to be dedicated to art and nonprofit spaces, which is awesome. There's going to be 60,000 square feet of production and small manufacturing spaces, and 115 square feet for retail and neighborhood amenities. So there's massive plans for this neighborhood. Dogpatch actually saw 226% growth in population between 2010 and 2020. So I was really surprised to see that. The other thing that's in Dogpatch that I am excited about, have you guys been to Restoration Hardware? The food is actually, it's better than I expected because I heard it was not that good, but I went there actually for my birthday with my kids. I'm a sucker for architecture, and like Restoration Hardware knows how to build things, and it is gorgeous. It's their showroom for San Francisco, but then they have this restaurant, and then upstairs they have this massive roof deck. I found it was really odd that they didn't have bar service up there because there's like all this Restoration Hardware furniture and, you know, these massive views and fire pits, and can I get a drink, please? Anyway, it's really, really gorgeous. And then an old school fun one that's been around as long as I've been here is the Ramp, and they have music on Sundays. I think they have salsa dancing and stuff, and that is right on the water. So that's a fun place to go. But there's a lot of fun little spots in the neighborhood. Oh, they also have a bouldering place, and I went there actually with my youngest son. He's really into climbing. They have a massive bouldering gym in the neighborhood as well, and that's a fun thing to check out if you're into climbing. Now that we've covered 3 neighborhoods that are mostly condos, let's jump into some neighborhoods that offer you some single families, because I'm sure not everyone wants to be in a condo. Maybe you want a bit more space to entertain or grow your family, or maybe you just want to lounge in a backyard, or you want, I mean, one downside to condos is like the storage. So maybe you're an avid biker or surfer or snowboarder or all of the above. And like, where do you put that gear? You need a single family home. So the first neighborhood I'm going to talk about that has mostly single family homes is Bernal Heights. And 2 of our OpenAI clients that we sold to in the last 12 months actually chose to be in Bernal Heights. To be clear, they weren't only looking in Bernal Heights. Most of the buyers that we work with anyway that are looking in Bernal Heights, they're also looking in Noe Valley, sometimes Glen Park as well. Many of the people that land in Bernal, they actually do so because they want to stretch their money a little bit further while still getting into a great house with some of the similar neighborhood feel. Like I feel like it feels quite similar, but not exactly. Let's start a little bit on location. So let's take a look on the map. So this is Bernal. Let's zoom out for a second. You have Mission Bay here, right? And it's relatively pretty close. I mean, you can get there by car in 10 to 15 minutes in traffic, and you can get there on public transit in like 25 to 30 minutes. And then also, I mean, we have quite a few just regular old ordinary tech buyers who buy here, and they like this proximity to the 101. So you have a bunch of different sections of Bernal. You have, this is the North Slope. You have the West Slope here. You have the South Slope here, which is kind of around Cortland. And then you have the East Slope here. On the North Slope, a lot of times here you can get views of downtown. You get really great views from the West Slope. South Slope is going to have the best walkability in terms of you have the access to Cortland. The North Slope, there's not as much going on in terms of restaurants. They have a few restaurants in here, but not a ton, like 3 or 4. And then you're kind of walking over to Mission Street or into this section of the Mission in order to kind of get your restaurant scene. So you do have closer proximity to the BART, which is nice. This side of Bernal is going to be your most affordable side because it overlooks the freeway and people don't love it. Also, it feels just a little crazy up here. It's just kind of like a little hard to get around up there. And then this area, like around Holly Park, Google's not showing this in Bernal, but it is Bernal, which is kind of funny. This is kind of the worst weather part of Bernal. It's pretty windy over there, which is interesting. The rest of Bernal, I would say, has like generally similar weather. You know, you saw it's centered around that Bernal Hill, and you know, there's a good outdoor lifestyle situation going on there. It's got it for a small neighborhood, actually has quite a few parks. You've got Bernal Hill, you've got Presida Park. It's kind of like having your living room as a park because you can just go there. Your kids are playing. All the neighbors from surrounding the park are coming out to hang out. Holly Park is also awesome and large. Bernal Hill, walking around there, there's like epic views. It's nice in terms of just having a lot of outdoor options right in the neighborhood. In terms of commute and stuff, like I mentioned, the commute to OpenAI is pretty easy, but like public transit in the neighborhood, it's okay, not great. You've got, like I said, you've got the BART from the north side, but you have to walk there. So it's probably 10 minutes. I would give it maybe a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of public transit, but you do have some tech shuttles that you can walk to as well that are readily available. One thing I would say, I tried to kind of point it out to you on the map about some of the different like sub neighborhoods, but I would say more than any other neighborhood, Bernal has a lot of sub neighborhoods and it's very block by block. So too much for me to go into in this video, but if you reach out, obviously we'll guide you through all of the different nuances. It's a very, very nuanced neighborhood, and those things are going to impact like both the price and the lifestyle of being there. My clients who live in Bernal, they always talk about like the community feel of the neighborhood. It is a neighborhood where they really know each other. They're really supporting each other. I think it is special when I talk to people who live there. They are always talking about that. When I'm hosting open houses there, I really notice, the neighbors are all there like chatting and they're friends and they know each other. That's a really awesome thing. Comparing it, I mentioned that a lot of times they're not necessarily choosing between Noe and Bernal. Many of our buyers want to be in Noe, but they end up being in Bernal because it's similar enough. The value proposition between the two is actually pretty distinct. For example, a 3-bedroom home in Noe Valley is going to be somewhere between $2.5 and $3.5 million. A similar home in Bernal is going to be somewhere between $2 and $3 million. So you get a substantial discount for going to Bernal. The investment potential in Bernal is compelling. All the prices in San Francisco fell in 2022. I'll never forget it. But Bernal has taken longer to recover than Noe and even several other neighborhoods that we sell in. And I have zero doubts that it's going to recover. Noe is always going to be more expensive. It's a neighborhood worth betting on because there's not something that happened to it that made it not recover. It just, for some reason, hasn't quite caught up. In terms of like comparing the two, 24th Street, it has more going on. I would say it's a bit more polished than Cortland. And also, as I mentioned before, like you don't have access to Cortland from much of the neighborhood. Honestly, even in Noe, it's not that 24th is accessible from every property in Noe. The ones that it is accessible to sell for significantly more than the ones that is a longer walk. You've got great restaurants, great shops. Progressive Grounds is going to be a great place to check out for your morning coffee. Bernal Star is a great place to go for casual dining. The inventory is somewhat similar. I would say in Bernal, you have definitely a lot of early 1900s construction. All of San Francisco, let's face it, has like some weird like spaces that have been developed without permits. And I just see more of that in Bernal, that it hasn't been done as well without permits as some other areas. But in general, you're looking at that early 1900s, beautiful details like cove ceilings, hardwood floors, just a nice amount of housing stock between that like 2 and 3 price point. If I have someone that really can't go above like 2.5, 2.6, I'm definitely going to be telling them that Bernal should be at the top of their list, because that price point in Noe, you have to trade off so much in order to get a house in that price point. It's a house like under 2.5 in Noe is very hard to come by, and often it comes with a lot of compromises. So I would just say the key to the neighborhood is kind of like understanding the different neighborhoods, and we have videos on that, but definitely like going and visiting at multiple times a day, walking around the areas, just checking out the block by block. A lot of times some of the streets are really tight, but others are not. We always guide people, like even before they're going to an open house, we're like, oh, by the way, this particular block is not great because of X, Y, and Z. And so that they can decide if they even want to go there or not. Clearly, I'm running out of steam because my neighborhoods are getting shorter and shorter. But if you're still with me, oh my God, thank you. So if you thought Bernal was a deal, the next neighborhood that I'm going to go over, it actually offers even better pricing, and it's flatter, and it has some of the best restaurants in the entire city. So first, before I do that, let me know in the comments below which neighborhood, if any, of these would you have bought in if you are currently working in AI. So I want to talk about the Mission District. And for those of you who don't know, OpenAI started in the Mission. It's still operating there. I think they're moving their HQ. They have all that office space. I think the HQ is going to be in Mission Bay, but they are still working in the Mission. At least that's what my clients tell me. I didn't realize that Elon opened XAI. Actually, I didn't even know he was calling it that. I thought it was Grok, but I guess XAI is part of what is building his AI that is Grok. Have you guys checked out Grok? Oh my gosh. My husband was showing it to me the other day. I have not checked it out except for this experience. Was just absolutely hilarious because first of all, in order to get access to this section of it, you have to buy their premium membership on X. They have this like cussing version where it just, basically like slams you. You have all these different personalities that you can pick, and they're really good. They sound like a real friend, and they're just pretty hilarious. I mean, I think it's funny. This AI stuff is blowing my mind. I mean, I am obsessed. I'm currently on ChatGPT right now is my obsession on the voice one, but I feel like I have like a personal coach. I feel like I have a professional HR department, which I don't have. I feel like I have I'll be like, oh, I had this situation going on with my son the other day, and this is what happened. Tell me, act like you're a parenting coach and tell me how I could have handled that better. It's just, and then you could just have this long conversation with a friend. I find it really cool. So there's also a company called PI, which is Physical Intelligence, and they are working on AI for robotics, which I think is going to be the next big thing. I cannot wait to have my own personal robot to unload my dishwasher and, iron and all of the things. How cool. Okay, let me show you where the Mission District is on the map. Okay, so basically you are just, you have Bernal here and you have the Mission District here. And then obviously, so to zoom out, you have Mission Bay here. The commute is similar. I actually typed in from Tartine Factory, which is a great restaurant in the Mission. It was basically the same times as Bernal, which was 10 to 15 minutes by car and 25 to 30 minutes on public transit. In the Mission, you have, it's separated. This is Van Ness that's running through here. And you kind of have two sides of the Mission. You have the east side, and then you have the west side. As you can see, there's not a ton on the west side. You also kind of run into Mission Dolores, which I think sometimes people confuse as the Mission. It does do better on a price per square foot than the Mission itself. But things on the west side are going to sell for a little bit more than things on the east side. And they feel pretty different. I mean, Mission Street itself is not great, in my opinion, but Valencia is really, really nice. Guerrero is outside of the Mission. Obviously, there's a ton of restaurants and stuff along Valencia Street, but you also have a ton of restaurants here along 24th. The Mission, could be a great choice if you work in AI or tech and, maybe you work in AI and you want to walk to AI because one of your companies there. You might also choose the Mission out of this list if you're looking for something a little bit more edgy, something with a little bit more history and culture that's walkable, and yet it still has access to Mission Bay and the freeway. One of my YouTube buyers is in contract on a luxury condo there. So he went to college in San Francisco. He's been living in the South Bay and he wanted to move back and he really wanted to be in the Mission. We ended up finding this very, very cool bachelor pad with this hot tub roof deck with views. He's just I want to be in the vibrancy of all the restaurant scene. And there's a great nightlife scene there too. So we were actually able to get him into contract for $500,000 under list price, which was pretty exciting. So just like Bernal, the property values have fallen and they haven't quite gotten back up. But I feel like Bernal is a little closer to being on its way back up, whereas the Mission is still struggling. The good news for buyers, it is like my YouTube guy. It's a great time to pick up a property for a lot less than you could have a few years ago. And it's interesting with all these communities, almost all of them, except the last one I'm going to share with you, they are all on sale for our AI buyers. So in my opinion, I think the Mission has some of the best food and the best nightlife in the entire city. So being able to walk to all of this, also being close, it's not in there, but being close to Dolores Park, it really feels like city living. It definitely has more of an edge to it than, say, Chestnut Street. But I will tell you, like, there's streets like LePage, I don't know if I'm saying that right, LePage, Linda. We have a great listing coming up on Bird. These are more closer or inside of Mission Dolores. But there was a time not that long ago that those streets were just like my cooler clients. They had to be there. There was like the only like 4 streets that they would consider living on in San Francisco. So because I've seen it before and I've been there before, I do think it will come back. And then that area, you know, to the east, which I showed you. Let me just show you again. The area here to the east of Van Ness, right? I think this area, it has a little bit more soul. And it's got great restaurants like Heirloom Cafe, Penny Roma, Ernest. Have you guys been to Ernest? It's so good. Also, Tartine Factory is so good. San Juan is definitely on my list, and I cannot believe I have not been there. But all of those are over here. The list goes on and on. Those are just things off the top of my head. So as I said, you know, some people feel like it's a little too edgy. So I do think if you're a buyer that's looking there, it's important to go multiple times a day, do your research, and of course, we will do our best to help you learn the streets and the blocks and all of that. There've been kind of an unproportionate share of new developments over the years who've taken interest in the Mission. And so there's been some cool, like big houses like built in there and mixed in, particularly on that east side. It's not unusual to see a down to the studs, like larger luxury home mixed in with some smaller homes that haven't quite been updated for 100 years. But this is interesting, you guys. So one thing that I'm really keeping my eye on that you should know about that's really changing development in this area of town is that our average houses in the Mission, in Noe, in Bernal, they're not overly large. And there was some new legislation that was passed a few years ago that prohibits the building of monster houses. And I think the idea behind it was really good. But my understanding and how this has translated to the southwest side of town is that the new builds, they can no longer be more than 2,500 square feet. Get this, including the garage, without having to put it in a second large unit, like 1,500 square feet. So my prediction here is that the newer homes, the homes that have been built in the last 10 years before that happened, those ones that are over 3,000 square feet, I actually think that they're going to kind of appreciate at a different level. We have lots of buyers in the $4 to $6 to $7 million price point that want to be in this section of town in a 3,000 to 4,000 square foot house. But there's no more new ones that are going to happen. So it's only going to be those older ones that are trading. And I think they're going to start, and we're actually already seeing it, that they're going to be trading for higher than they ever have. So that's an interesting tidbit. Thank you so much, San Francisco Board of Supervisors. In terms of prices in the Mission, there's going to be a range of prices with some of the nice single family homes selling in the low 2s and some larger, fancier ones that are going to be approaching 4. But those are going to be fewer and farther between, but they are out there. The reality is, if you took a $3 million home in the Mission and you moved it over to Noe, it would literally be $5 million. In Bernal, it would probably be 4. There's a lot of condos in the neighborhood, and you can find one there for about 1.1 to 1.8 million, or right around like 900 to 1,000 a square foot. So the neighborhood, it's known for, it's the Mission. So it's known for like taquerias, really vibrant murals. I love the murals. I really think that the investment potential here is compelling compared to Noe, where the typical 2-bedroom condo starts at 1.5, 1.6. Similar units in the Mission are going to run 1.1 to 1.2. And for me, what really sets apart the Mission Mission is just the cultural vibrancy. It's just totally different. I love the kind of high to low, right? And like nothing sums that up better than like a fantastic taqueria and then Lazy Bear, which is a very expensive restaurant, both found in the same neighborhood. So wrapping up the Mission and moving on, I have one more neighborhood for you. It is a neighborhood that is not really on sale. And if you're still with me, oh my God, thank you. Hit that like or subscribe or just hire us. Jeez Louise, you don't want to watch all these videos, right? Come and work with us directly. That's why we're doing this, so that we can meet you. But another neighborhood that is definitely on the list for our AI buyers is Potrero Hill. So let's take a look at where that is. Potrero Hill is here, right? And so it is just south of Mission Bay and just west of Dogpatch, and it is up on a hill, right? So what happens up on a hill, you guys? You get views, but it's going to be super close. So it will cut your commute time in half, which is, from Bernal or the Mission, because you're right there. The thing about Potrero Hill is inventory, it's tight. Not a lot of homes come up, especially not a lot of single family homes. There is a good mix. There just isn't a lot of inventory. So when a client tells me that they really want to buy in Potrero Hill, we basically say, okay, where else can we add to the list? Because if you're only keeping this on the list, there's just not enough. It could take years. And we do have clients who will wait for years for a house in a very specific location. Usually Potrero is not one that people wait for years on, that they'll hold out only for that neighborhood. I don't consider it a do or die neighborhood. So not only do you have easy access to Mission Bay and downtown, but also obviously the freeways. You also have a Caltrain in the neighborhood. So it's super, super easy to get around by a car or public transit. Mission Bay is going to be 5 to 10 minutes by a car or 15 to 20 minutes using public transit. There's been some big new developments on condo buildings in the neighborhoods. There's some massive developments, not a lot, but there's been a few that have been built with a lot of units. But I would say most of the inventory is largely made up of more that 1900 style construction, that like San Francisco quintessential construction. If high rises aren't your thing, or maybe you want a single family home, but you want to be as close as possible to AI, because remember, Dogpatch didn't have any hardly single family homes in it. So this may be the neighborhood for you. And also it has great views. So in terms of, restaurants and the walkable street, you're mostly going to be on 18th Street. There's some great restaurants. You've got Plow is going to be a really great place to go for brunch. Everybody loves their lemon ricotta pancakes. I love ricotta. So that's absolutely awesome. There's another place called Parker. That's another great lunch spot. There's this place called Farley's. They have this thing, it's called like community coffee in a cup or something. And it was like kind of like a newsstand coffee place. And I swear like everyone in the neighborhood goes there, and it's very like people are chatting with each other. They're kind of reading the news together. So super cute coffee place. In all, I would say Potrero Hill, walkable street, it's not massive. Like I would say if you have, 24th Street, if you're familiar with that, it's probably half of 24th Street, maybe not quite half, but there's a lot there. So you get great weather, fantastic weather, views, walkability, and access to the freeway. It's just really a question of whether or not the inventory is going to come up. I'd say the biggest downside that I can think of the neighborhood is on the hills, they kill my shins sometimes, right? So you'll park on a hill like this, and then your car goes like this, and then when you open the door, it slams on your shin, and oh my God, it hurts. I've gotten better over the years now that I'm a pro. So anyway, this is getting long, so I'm not going to go into all of the local watering holes and stuff, but there's plenty. Chez Mama's, like there's a Vietnamese place, Sunflower. There's a lot of stuff. It's a really great Mexican place. We can do that anytime. Let's make sure we get the real estate stats down, and then I'm gonna let you guys go. But I want you to know, like, how much does it cost to live here, and how does it compare cost-wise to surrounding neighborhoods? So for price points, like for a smaller condo or TIC, you could start at like $600,000 for a small one-bedroom unit, and you can go all the way up above $4 or $5 million for a contemporary or like newly redone single family home. Last year, condos and TICs ranged between 600 for a 1-bedroom up to 2.8 for a 2 to 3 bedroom condo, with like the top of the line ones, the highest priced ones having views and or being close to that corridor. And then last year, the single family homes topped out at 4.2. There's a wide range of options, and I've definitely seen homes there sell over 5 million as well. Just kind of comparing some of the neighborhoods, average price home in Noe was $3.1 million. And in Potrero, the average price landed at $2.2 million. While in Bernal, you were actually looking at the average was $1.5 million. And then interestingly enough, and this surprised me, the average in the Mission was 1.7. So it was actually higher than Bernal, but it's not higher than Bernal. So this is just where sometimes like stats, they lie because it depends on kind of the nuances of what you're looking at. And that's where it's really just important like to work with somebody who can help explain it. So another important point to consider is just like the disparity of housing inventory between the neighborhoods, such as Noe, Bernal, or the Mission. There simply just isn't a lot of inventory in Potrero. There's just fewer homes compared to its counterparts. The bottom line is, I would say if you're prioritizing, kind of an older, when I say older, like more established neighborhood with single family homes and more classic style architecture that you want to be close to Mission Bay, it's a great choice. Also, if you want something with a strong sense of community, really great weather, walkability, a convenient commute, and some of the best brunch spots in the city. And there's great restaurants as well. But then Potrero Hill is going to be an awesome choice. My guess is this is a lot for you. It was a lot for me. But I actually made a complete breakdown of all 6 neighborhoods, and you can download it in the description below. And it's going to compare these neighborhoods from hopefully on one sheet. I haven't made it yet, but you're going to see the amenities, the homes, the prices, and a lot more. So if that's helpful, click down below and you can see that. And if you want to know even more, because you're not tired about San Francisco neighborhoods, you should check out this playlist where we have all kinds of things about living in San Francisco. It'll literally save you hundreds of hours of research. So just click right here to watch it next.